Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So today's August 21st, right? I'm with a good buddy of mine, Clay Jensen. How you
Hey,
doing, Clay?
good.
So Clay and I have been talking. For the folks that maybe don't know who we are, Clay and I met. But I think it's been a few months now, Clay.
Yeah, Memorial Day
Uh,
weekend, I think, was our first, like 30th of May, maybe.
Yeah, so if you're curious about Clay and kind of his background, we'll give a little bit of a credenza. But if you want the full story about Clay, I encourage you to go to chummyvet.com and the Ordinarily Extraordinary Veterans section of that, and you can read sort of the chronology of Clay's experience. But I'm just going to give a quick kind of credenza overview because we're going to get into a lot of discussion here about how everything that's transpiring in Afghanistan is sort of affecting us as veterans, and then sort of reflect on the dialogue. So just real quick, Clay, because I want to make sure you hit on the high notes of who you are. But just from my vantage point, Clay, you're absolutely a true American hero and patriot. You
Nice.
have three, count them, folks, three Purple Hearts to your name. You have been a Special Operations Team Alpha team leader. You have been in so many, on at least three continents, fighting terror. You have a very, very in-depth knowledge of what counterterrorism operations are and how they affect the veteran, the special operations community, the conventional community, and our country at large. So yeah, and then the guy who has much less accolades, right? And this is typically the case, right? Myself, I was in Afghanistan for 2 years. I was up in RC East in 2009 and 2010 when our troop levels were essentially the highest, over 100,000. And then I was in Uruzgan in 2014. From a credenza standpoint, Clay, how many, I don't know if you've even ever added it up, but do you know how much time you spent in Afghanistan?
Yeah, I think I added it up. It ended up being 24 months on the
Okay.
ground. So similar to a lot of you guys that did 2 solid years, I did 4 shorter deployments. My longest deployment was 9 months, and that was with the 82nd. Other than
Okay.
that, 5, 6 month deployments. So.
Yeah.
But over, between 2001 and the end of 2008. So the first half of the war, I was in and out of there. So.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly been a hell of a week, and I hope amidst all the voices, I'm glad you and I are doing this discussion, because I think voices like yours, voices like mine, and frankly the voices of the veteran community, I feel like are getting kind of drowned out right now with folks that have a platform, frankly, and they're offering their 2 cents on something that I think has intimately touched guys like you and me and our brothers and sisters in arms very closely over the last couple decades.
Right.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there, but what I kind of wanted to kick off with, and we have a few talking points that we've thought through on this. Let's go into just the interpreter situation, our
Right.
Afghan partners, and kind of how that's personally involved our time over the last week or so.
Well, so I guess for me personally, I did signals intelligence collection. So I always had an interpreter assigned directly to me. A lot of
Yeah,
guys worked with interpreters here and there or had them for missions or whatever. I ate, slept, walked, rode around a truck, and got in gunfights with the same dude,
yeah,
partner for 5 to 9 months at a time. So I obviously have great concern for their safety and I always did, but the difference now is we're not there with them.
right,
Uh, most of them aren't armed, aren't allowed to be, depending on command and what
yeah,
unit they're with. But so they definitely kept my and your and a lot of people's lives safe and stuff for a long time, and I think we owe it to them to bring them somewhere to safety. For now.
There were promises made. I mean, I think,
Right.
you know, when I look at myself in the mirror and remember and recall, and even in the current sense, I mean, just this week, you know, I'll read you one of my former interpreters, one of the text messages that I've received from him. You know, he worked for U.S. forces for 5 years, to include the drawdown, the hard parts of turning this over to the Afghan National Security Forces that, in my mind, have absolutely been fighting and sacrificing in tremendous numbers since we left, just to debunk that narrative that, you know, oh, you guys should stand and fight. It's like, they have been, folks. Welcome to the war in Afghanistan. So here's what he says. Okay, he's got a couple younger brothers that he's very worried about, that he's already submitted a visa for. You know, on a website. You know, this guy is fluent in English and he's a U.S. citizen now. You know, totally ready to sponsor his brothers that he believes are very much at risk, given the fact that he himself worked with us, and not to mention they're an ethnic minority within Afghanistan. They are not Pashtun. So this is what he says. Good morning. I got your voicemail and email. Thank you for the update. I got a message from my brothers that they have passed the north gate and they're essentially inside, and he enumerates multiple gates that they went through, and they're essentially at the last point, waiting to manifest to get on an aircraft. Phenomenal. I mean, this kind of brought me to tears when I read it. Just thank God they're inside the gate. I got more updates today. Literally, I just got off the phone with him, you know, that they're being told now maybe 3 or 4 days. You know, I mean, they are definitely far from being out of the woods yet, but at least they're within the perimeter in Kabul. So at the Karzai airport. So again, I you know, for me, I'll just share the frustration I have in this whole thing is like, I love the images that we're seeing of people getting out.
Right.
But I can't believe how botched the withdrawal was, to think about this on several fronts. And
yeah.
What are your thoughts? Yeah.
Well, I think we talked about it earlier. We just shouldn't have been in this position in the first place. I think orderly processing, orderly manifestation, and orderly movement to the airport. You know, at that point, you know, if we have 40,000 people that need out, you say, okay, next Wednesday you drive to the airport. Next Friday you drive to the airport. We didn't, I guess, have the foresight or the acceptance of the given knowledge that this would happen very rapidly once we left.
Yeah, I'll just say, you know, even, you know, just separate of how you feel about you, me, anyone else, separate of how we feel about our strategy in Afghanistan, you know, just decoupling that from this issue right here and now.
Right.
Our interpreters and our veterans have been advocating to get the partners and those at risk because of their involvement with the United States forces. They've been advocating this for years. I mean, I can count at least.
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, yeah, we were bringing guys home in 2005, 2006, 7, 8. You know, they'd worked with us for 3 or 4 rotations, and we're like, hey, you know, we'll get you home. And you know, we did all the interviews and stuff with the people over there, and went through the embassy over there. And you know, there's a couple guys I ran into too at one of my best friend in the world. His retirement ceremony after 25 years was last Thursday, and oddly, the day Ghazni fell and they decided to launch the 82nd, the unit he and I started it together on the same team. So we're excited for those guys. Be safe, but we wish we were you right now. With that, at his retirement ceremony, 2 of his Afghan national interpreters were at his retirement ceremony. One lives in Louisiana, and is in the Army as a 35 Lima, the linguist.
So he's now serving the American government. I mean, I mean, this is a point that I don't think can be glossed over. And frankly, I love all the images of people getting out. And I think you said it, only as a senior NCO can say, here I am, you know, the former officer getting worked up. But, you know, I've leaned on you, Clay, for just, hey, am I nuts, right? And I mean, here's the thing, like again, all of this should have been avoided. We were in Bagram and essentially left during the middle of the night. Why weren't we airlifting folks out of Bagram in a controlled fashion?
Like the most secure place in that country. You know, why weren't we, you know?
Right.
I mean, if they're cleared to come to America, they're cleared in that inside perimeter. on a bus.
Right. And this,
Like,
again, the other side of this is the political failure of our bureaucracies just to process this stuff. Because again, I was telling you, like, I can name, former people I went to West Point with that have served, fought alongside these interpreters, feel the same way you and I do about them. I mean, they were force multipliers. They were force protection, frankly, for us. I'm sure interpreters have gotten me out of a jam. I'm glad I came home.
I can guarantee you.
Yeah, guaranteed.
I've had early warning about an attack on your outpost, and then you launched an infantry platoon or whatever, how you want to look at it.
Yeah,
I can guarantee you, signals intelligence and the information derived from those interpreters has kept you asleep at night.
Yeah, and that's, and this is the side of things that I think, when you take the uniform off and you become, a private citizen again in an all volunteer force, I may, add, we've been lobbying. Not me directly. I mean, I've been doing some of that, even when I was in uniform. But, we've all posed these questions. We posed them to our senior military leaders, many of which have worn stars for well over a decade.
Right.
We have people in influence that we've been lobbying for. And again, I'll go back to some of these veterans and some of my classmates. I mean, some of these guys have gone to law school since getting out. They formed organizations. So again, I appreciate all the senators and congressmen and even the president, frankly, saying, hey, let's focus on the here and now. I'm like, great, but how am I supposed to marry that up with the years of lobbying that has occurred and your inaction, frankly? We were doing our jobs, I thought.
Absolutely.
I mean, there were 20-hour days where I'd pose a phone call, up the chain of command to check on someone's, visa paperwork to get them the hell out of there. And, what are these folks doing during this? Everyone keeps saying, oh, it's been such a long war. Yeah, tell us about it, right? I don't got to tell Clay Jensen about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My first deployment was, October of 2001. So I've been there.
Yeah.
Beginning, and I know the culture, I know the people, the politics between us and the surrounding nations that are also involved in that area.
Yeah.
We're not the only country that's in Afghanistan. So
right.
I don't mean our allies. So
well, what do you think? And this will pivot a little bit. And again, just the military planning or lack thereof that appears to have played out. And I don't want to armchair quarterback it, but
no, I don't want to second guess anybody. I'll just tell you the way it was when I was there.
Right.
Over the years. After certain events took place, i.e. Collateral damage event, human rights type accusation or event, things get clamped down. And unfortunately, they don't get released back open ever. So over the years, through mistakes or accidents or just us not knowing, there were also civilians somewhere or just anything like that. It was hard to get air support. It was hard to get them to actually fire at the enemy. That was who was shooting at you.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of restrictions that were placed on us, targets we couldn't hit that were high value targets, running these operations, the finances, the rat lines in and out of Afghanistan from Pakistan. And we couldn't hit them because their cousin married the provincial governor's son.
Yeah, that's a point that I think cannot be lost in this for so many. And, everyone wants a war to be characterized in black and white, and it's just never the case, and there's some frustration in that because I agree. I mean, as a former intel guy, we had people essentially on our no touch list or would evolve to a no touch list because we were worried about the political implications. But, I know the sentiment on the ground. When you've lost friends or comrades or other service members, and pulling back the curtain that this person was involved in it, it's kind of like one of the WTF moments, right? It's like, that's what I'm getting at. We'll get into the mental health aspects of the veteran community, but sometimes this caricature of all of us kind of being a little nuts and heated about stuff is or a victim, it's just not accurate. I mean, 2 + 2 still equals 4. And there's a lot of frustration that we can't, go after people, even when, we're lauding essentially right now our counterterrorism mission. Our counterterrorism mission was fought with one hand behind our back.
Absolutely. You know, I was deep into that world over there. Every time I was there, you know, we were going after facilitators, financiers, bomb making facilities, and networks. And
if I could, I want to tell folks, right? Because even if you don't read about Clay, one of the things I love talking to you, Clay, about is as a signals intelligence professional and a person that was constantly supporting and moving around the entire country. This is why I value your opinion so much, right? Like, you've been in Helmand, you were at the aftermath of Wanat, you were in the Korengal, you were in Kamdesh, you were in all these hotbeds. You have touched it so intimately closely. And again, I said this at the beginning, right? You have bled for your country. Yeah. You've received the Purple Heart 3 times, folks. Right. And this is what I'm getting at. Like, please listen to Clay. Like, all these voices that are being amplified. Not only did Clay have the on-ground experience, he covered a lot of ground. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah.
You know, but as far as the counterterrorism mission went, I can tell you that reporting that we placed up was denied. You know, the fact that we were, you know, engaging foreign fighters and killing foreign fighters. You know, I'd have a dead Egyptian with identification papers on the ground in front of me, and they'd say, no, he's not foreign.
Yeah, I ran into something very similar even as late as 2014.
Yeah,
with an 82nd Airborne, you know, All-American standing over a body, and it's like, well, don't say that in the report,
right?
About the pigmentation of their skin color, because we don't want implications that this is a foreign fighter getting out, you know.
Right.
And that's the thing, you know. Now, you know, you and I, as intel professionals, we're not revealing anything here. We're not revealing TTPs or anything that you know, is going against our oath or upholding classifications. We're just telling you the on-ground perspective of what we've heard.
What I saw on the ground, the guy that I killed, that's not intelligence. That's battlefield. That's what happened.
Yeah. I mean,
but then I say, yeah, he's Egyptian. Here's his papers. I'm doing his biometrics. See if they match up. And they're like, no, he's not foreign.
Right.
Because at that time, the narrative already was we rooted out Al Qaeda and they were gone.
Right.
Whereas in fact, you look at Ayman al-Zawahiri, he's the number 1 in charge of Al Qaeda, and he's in Afghanistan and has been in Afghanistan since Tora Bora.
Yeah, I brought this up, and I feel like I've faced some criticism, right? And it's like, you know, Joe Biden, for example, and I'm not. This is not a political statement. This is just Joe Biden was our vice president for 8 years of the Afghan war. Plus, he's going into his 9th year where he's the head guy. You know, he's the commander in chief. So, you know, by my math, about 45% of the time of this very long war that, you know, Joe Biden is claiming, you know, he wants to stop the bleeding on, you know, this is not news to him, right? No,
he's not surprised. He is not surprised at all.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I seriously do question his faculties, but I'm just getting to the point where I'm just like, you know, this narrative, and let's go ahead and jump into it, right? There's a narrative that is coming out from the White House, and I feel like it's a lot of spin right now. You and I were talking earlier about the Vietnam comparison. Why do you think that is unfair?
Well, in all honesty, I think it's unfair for several reasons. Comparing the reasons why we were at each place.
Right.
We were at one assisting the French in their withdrawal and trying to reduce the spread of communism.
Right.
Which people have seemed to have forgotten about, why we have had a lot of these kind of quote unquote forever wars. Whereas Afghanistan, we went initially to strike back at those who hit us in the United States. And so people ask me, why are we in Afghanistan? I'd say 9/11. I mean, have you forgotten? Honestly, you know, it's cliche. But, and then, you know, the next question obviously is, why are we still there? And then I would try and tell them the things that I have seen, like dead women and children in the street after Taliban came through and found out they were in school. You know, I've seen that. And now people are just finally waking up after 20 years and saying, "Oh my God, I had no idea." And I'm like, "How could you not?"
Right.
It was everywhere for 20 years.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, and this goes at why I think it's unfair, because it's an all volunteer force. Number one.
Well, there's that. Yeah.
Right. And there's the element of, unlike a conscripted army in Vietnam, many people, and I will say this about all conscripted militaries, right? I feel for that time period, don't get me wrong. And this is what I think, is some of the spin is around, if you say and continue to, I kind of feel like the narrative almost plays, you mentioned it, literally forever war. It's like a bad word. Well,
Right.
of course, we don't want who wants forever war? I mean, you and me have seen war. I hate war. I despise it. But yeah,
we all volunteered to go there so that everybody else wouldn't have to.
exactly. Bingo.
People volunteer so there doesn't have to be a draft.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing too. Like, after I was 18 when 9/11 happened. Right. Now I got gray hairs in my beard. Right. This war has gone on. Right. Like we get it, but wars evolve, and even keeping the peace evolves.
Right.
There was a KSAT news crew sitting at my kitchen table the other day after I did the first video of kind of me just frustrated. I think that was on the 15th.
Right.
About this evacuation, this botched evacuation, and sharing my frustrations. And I didn't know they were going to do this, but they showed an SF, a Special Forces NCO, who's from San Antonio, by the way. He was one of 3 soldiers that was killed in an attack in Nangarhar in February of 2020. And, you and I were talking earlier, one of those other soldiers, you were an NCO for, right? I mean,
well, yeah. So after my final injury, and I was just kind of hanging out waiting to retire, young Tony Rodriguez came into 7th Special Forces Group onto the SADE's SIGINT team.
Yeah.
And so he was in process and kind of getting assigned some schools and stuff he'd have to go through before he was operational. And I hooked him up while I was on my way out. I found out right about the time COVID hit that he had passed away doing the job.
Right.
And he's only the 6th SADE guy to die in the war. I mean, there's only 150 of us in the Army, but.
Well, and I never here's the thing, we got to be careful on it. I think we have to be even more careful because all this Vietnam discussion is coming up because it triggers all these very strong emotions.
Right.
You and I, whether it's via our communities or sort of these realizations that we have even after service, when you look back in hindsight, so many people joined to do the job, just like you said, all volunteer force, you want to go jump out of airplanes, you want to go take care of this cancer, right? Mm-hmm. And after 9/11, recruitment was sky high. And again, it's just, I've gotten the same questions like, well, why were we there? And, one of the reasons I'm bringing up these individuals is most people don't know who they are. I'll be honest, I wasn't making the connection that even someone in my own city was literally the last casualty that we've suffered in Afghanistan. But I'm going to go back to that point, and I'm going to make this very clear that forever war for the United States, I feel like those gentlemen paid the ultimate sacrifice. Mm-hmm. And the fact is, devoid of however wherever you served, again, I'm not diminishing it, but for the last 18 months, our forever war for the United States military has not continued.
Right.
Forever war did stop. I mean, the violence ascent. I'm not saying operations completely halted or anything like that, but
and that's why. I mean, we were still continuing presence patrols and nation building activities and stuff and security. And
right.
At that point, that was enough to keep the peace.
Right.
And you and I even brought it up earlier. We still have people in Germany. We still have people in South Korea. We still have people, all over. But nobody asks why. Why are we in Turkey? Why do we have an Air Force base in Turkey?
Well, I think they forget that asking why did happen. It's just it fades in the narrative. I mean, I was just rereading a book about the West Point class of 1966, and one of the main individuals they focus on was Major Art Boniface, who in 1976 was hacked to death on the DMZ with another soldier. Right. And so what I'm getting at is we thought, there was talk back then in the mid 70s. What was that, 21 or 22 days or 22 years, I should say, after the armistice? Like we still had tumultuous times in keeping the peace. It was still, and you know the deal. I mean, I didn't go to Korea. My spouse did. And it's frustrating for families to pony up and, I think we have 38,000 people on the ground in Korea. My grandfather fought in Korea. So my point, he's 91, by the way. My point is just that agrarian society, you know, with a toehold from the United States and our strategic air power and our support. I mean, look how prosperous that country has become, and look how much we, the United States, have benefited from a personal security standpoint.
Yeah, well, and you know, we talk about the great power competition, and President Biden says he's pulling people back because there's greater threats than the Taliban. Well, okay, as you pointed out, for 18 months, the Taliban have not been a great threat to us in Afghanistan.
Right.
But if you want to fast forward to or shift to the great power competition, right now, as we're seeing between India and Pakistan, and then China, Russia, and us, I tell you what, Bagram, Jabad, Kandahar, Herat, those are great places to launch drones from.
Yeah, well, and just, I mean, this is going to tug at.
And for you know, I mean, that's a great strategic base.
Well, yeah,
China and Russia. So,
and just let's talk about the materiel, right, and the lack of accountability with this withdrawal of our materials. So, so this is the point that just anyone who's gone to basic training understands that the accountability of your equipment, how important it is, right? Like, I mean, you know the deal. Someone loses their firing pin in a base, and we all have this emotional experience we remember of a leader basically making it painful to go find that item, and people losing their careers over it, frankly. You know, and my point in saying that, and it gets back to your broader point about power, right? It's like, guys, what do you think these MRAPs are going to end up? What do you think these UAVs are going to? Bats hides. I mean, bats hides, man. Where do you think this stuff is going to end up amidst this vacuum? But go ahead. I know you're going to say something. I'm sorry.
No, I just, you know, I was going to say, what are the 6 worst words an NCO can hear on a nighttime parachute operation? Sergeant.
Well, go ahead. I didn't fall out of airplanes, brother. I'm sorry.
No, the 6 worst words you can hear on a nighttime jump are, Sergeant, have you seen my NVGs?
Yeah, exactly. And these are questions right now that we should be asking about entire programs. And I don't know who the general equivalent is in some of the military industrial complex that even outfitted a lot of this stuff. But we need to ask these hard questions from an accountability standpoint, because it does matter. You know, it might not be what our president is talking about right now. I'm certainly sure he doesn't want to talk about it.
Right. But well, he hasn't. You know, he's come out with prepared speeches and doesn't take any questions, so he hasn't talked about it. Yeah,
he's a puppet at this point. But like, what, you know, where's our Secretary of Defense? Where's our Chairman of the Joint Chiefs? Where is the planning? I mean, this is the stuff from my vantage point.
You know,
I can't fathom it.
You know, Lloyd Austin was my brigade commander in the 82nd Airborne Division. He was 3rd Brigade commander when he was a colonel.
Right.
I'm kind of, I mean, looking at the hard charger he was back then, you know, every Friday, kill, you know, and now it's, you know, I don't know if he was placed in that position to be hands off.
Yeah.
And I don't, unless the only thing that's helping me sleep a little bit is, what don't we know about this greater threat?
Yeah.
We're pulling people back. We're turning our backs on the Afghan people. We've created a human rights emergency. We've created, the United States is supposed to stop those. We've created one.
Well, and it goes back to this point. You know, you mentioned names of individuals that have grown up in the military that know this. They know what you're talking about, losing a pair of NVGs. It's our Secretary of Defense. But when I turn on the TV as a veteran, I mean, what they're taught, the sound bites, and again, it's.
I can't even fathom what Lloyd Austin would have done to me if I'd lost my NVGs on a jump.
Yeah, well, that's why I mean, he's kind of a scary looking guy. Honestly, he's a tall
imposing man. He's a very imposing man. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but even in that, when I turn on the TV and I see him and you know, General Milley, they're talking about, you know, I want to understand white rage, and I want to understand. It's like, guys, those are domestic issues. You're senior leaders within our Department of Defense. Like, you should be harping on accountability. I mean, a month ago, that was what we were talking about. I mean, where's the backbone, frankly, to stand on the president's desk or people of power to say, look, we need to account for this material. I mean, we saw it, right? We've seen the most dangerous course of action play out, and there's all these questions from an intelligence perspective of how the Taliban can basically overthrow. I don't even know if that's the right word. I think that's too strong of a word. How can this happen in 11 days and we not know about it? I mean, just to coordinate movement across a country, there's a digital signature. You and I both know that.
Right.
So, where's the head of the NSA? Where's the head of our CIA? And this is where I go back to, this investigation, right? It's like, we all know this was completely botched. And I'll go to the hero lauding for a moment, right? Like, I love, just like you, I just read you text message. I mean, my house feels like an operations center this week because I've been talking to interpreters, about getting their family out. So yes, it pulls at my heartstrings when I see, an airman's BDU top or ACU top on top of an Afghan toddler. It makes me feel good, but then it makes me also incredibly angry because you should never put a C-17 crew in that situation.
Right. Those should have been commercial aircraft with no problem of entry and exit.
Right. And not to mention, if you have this many people on the ground, I mean, just let's talk about risk mitigation. This could have went the other way.
Oh, man.
All it takes is an RPG to bring down a C-17.
Yeah, or one person with a hand grenade on them.
Well, not to mention they had to fly light, so you got to get a KC-135 in there at lower altitude to refuel them. So again, it's all this virtue signaling that our offices at the highest level are pushing out.
Are those airmen and pilots heroes? Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah,
100%. They did their job impeccably. They did something that was dangerous to get the mission done. And I'm very proud of what they did. They should have never been in that position.
Absolutely. I mean, the Marines. I mean, it's the same thing. I love watching a Marine holding an infant. I get it. And again, it's the tactical individuals that are always the heroes. Here's the thing. The person that holds even a bureaucratic office, and I would argue even in their senior military leaders, I mean, you have to evolve to bureaucracy at some point.
Right.
Do your job, planning, right? And I say this, right, because I'm even questioning so much of not my service, but my the foundations on which I've built my own trust in a system, right? And it's like, okay, I'm worrying about, frankly, this is the cynical me, Clay. And I'd ask you to tell me if I'm just nuts here, but I think you need to worry about the people that show up to the photo op to pin the medal on these guys' chests.
Right.
Because
who's going to want that attention?
Right. They're going to want that attention with the news crew there. But are they going to sit in the hot seat and truly be, ding, 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 the most accountable? Will they be accountable?
No. Right. A guy gets a Bronze Star for valor for saving his buddies, and his battalion commander pins it on. These guys, they did something incredible, and they're probably going to have Millie pin it on. Yeah,
exactly. And that's what I'm getting at. Like worry about the folks, because here's what happens. And, for all the folks that are on active duty, I'll just tell you, I got out, about six plus years ago. So I've had a little time, and even this is hard because I'm breaking a norm to say some of the things I'm talking about, but I don't know how in a profession of arms that's an all volunteer force, we're not asking these questions. And the reality of it is, platforms are what influence eventually. So, one of the reasons, Clay, you and I have been talking is like, look, like where's our voice, but where's the voice of our veteran community? And the deal, man, you get patted on the back, stuff goes wrong. You're not going to speak out,
No. So a lot of us, I can tell you Monday and Tuesday, I kind of just was in shock, kind of walked through the world, went to the gas station, the grocery store, didn't talk to anybody, just kind of stared straight forward. Didn't want to think about it. Did not want to think about it. Wednesday, talked to my girlfriend and I just finally, she said it was okay to break down, and I did hard.
Yeah.
And then so for the rest of the day, Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, I really figured out what I do think and critically thinking why it happened this way.
Right.
It starts back in 2004 or 5, when they, yeah, we've got Al Qaeda's gone, Bin Laden's gone,
Yeah.
out of the country, so now we're just working on nation building from then on out. And I think, which is great. I want Afghanistan prosperous like it was in the 70s before the Russians got there, shopping malls, movie theaters, bars, all that stuff. I think that's important. I think we should be there so the kids can go to school. I really do.
I think
that question, why did we stay? You're seeing it right now. That's why we stayed.
Right. And I mean, here's the thing, man. I mean, I know you're raising a little girl. I am too. That's been my breakdown moments is,
me too.
I mean, it's hard for me. In fact, I was talking to a buddy of mine, who again has sacrificed his whole entire adult life for the military. Right. And, he was telling me about a little girl in the Shigal Valley of Kunar that just haunts him in terms of, what is her life like. And again, I see that image in my own daughter, looking at her and saying, what is life like to be a woman in Afghanistan, to be a little boy in Afghanistan? And I talked about this in the other video, right? Like, as well as I do, the ISI is funding training and equipping this movement. From back in, these guys are going like this, right, brother, in a madrasa. Yeah. And what do you think that they have been promised by way of the spoils of war?
Absolutely. These young girls. So, I've befriended a few people that are in Afghanistan currently right now, and they're very scared. One's a young woman, 19 years old. And I think of her, from her mom, she heard about back in the day when we had to wear burqas.
Yeah.
Because she was born after we got there, Right. She was set to graduate college this December in Jalalabad, and she's still stuck in Jalalabad in her home right now, terrified. Yeah. She has SIV number and P2 priority. She cannot get to Kabul.
Right.
And get to the airport.
And again, I mean, we had an airbase in Jbad. We have had an airbase in Bagram.
Yeah, there's a runway in Jbad we used to fly in and out of the country from.
I mean, and here's the thing. I'm not, people are saying, well, I think, well, before I get there, let's tie a bow just on the humanitarian. The humanitarian crisis is just starting.
It's
right?
Unfathomable.
Right.
Because I've seen I've seen a village as the Taliban comes through, and then I've had to, man, yeah, I people have no idea what they're going to start seeing on the news here. And
well, let me ask you, and I'm not trying to put you in a dark spot, but
no,
if you can say it factually, what happens?
So, we would build a school in a village. The U.S. would build a school, and being part of the special forces, we're a community-based soldiers. We live and work amongst them and train their fighters and take them with us. So we're very closely tied into the community. We provide their medical care and things like that. Give them clean water, electricity, and, we'd get a call that the Taliban came through and attacked the school, and we'd rush down there, and, the female teachers would be dead in the street with their throats cut and beaten, stoned to death. And then, and then 3 or 4 of the young female students would be killed as an example to the other parents not to send their daughters to school. Well,
and we're going to talk
7,
Yeah, and we're going to get into the mental health side of this, but the point I'm trying to make is that is not a moot point, and that is not what's being talked about.
No.
Right now, and here's the thing, man. Like I go back to that analogy I was making earlier. You're almost made to feel like, especially what we've done, intelligence. We've had all these clearances. We've seen behind the curtain. It's like 2 + 2 still equals 4. And it makes me incredibly frustrated that it feels like there's this level of apathy for what's going to happen. And again, we're too high. The American public has it too good, frankly.
Well,
like the levels of Maslow's hierarchy, they can't see down to the basement. Right. And so you're trying to explain something to someone about how you feel. And I couldn't imagine seeing that. It's absolutely horrid and wretched, but just trying to explain it to someone else outside of therapy, frankly, they can't fathom. And in fact, they don't want to hear it, because who wants to hear it?
Because then they'd also have to understand the structure of the villages and the right. society and all that stuff and then, the whys and the hows of these things. I mean, it's just so foreign. So I would equate it, honestly. I used to say this to my guys before we went over there, guys that hadn't been. I said, it's like Bizarro world out of Superman. Everything is backwards.
Right.
From the way you write to the way things happen.
Yeah, man. I mean, and that's what that's why, we can't, from a humanitarian standpoint, again, this is rectifying that world with this world, right? And again, we volunteer for it, right? Like, we want to go do. I tell you right now, I'd have a very hard time volunteering under this administration. I don't know who would. There's some real heroes, I'm sure, that would still want to, but again, I don't think it's cowardice of people, but it's like just logically, it's like you're not going to let me do our missions.
I think so. Here's what I think. You talked about how 9/11 was the greatest recruiting tool, so it was Pearl Harbor.
Yep.
I think this is going to do the exact same thing, parallel to the end of the Vietnam War. I don't think anybody's going to join the Army. And that's counterintuitive what they're trying to do to build up and prepare for this great power competition.
Right.
Nobody's going to want to take on Russia if they can't beat the Taliban. Oh, lost your volume. What's that?
Can you hear me now, Clay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, we're good.
Who's going to want to go fight China toe to toe when we can't beat the people China is funding?
Right. And these are the responsibilities of our commander in chief and our senior military leaders. I mean, this is why these folks get paid the big bucks, and again, that what you just said is absolutely true. I mean, just do a poll, and I'm, in a way, I feel like I've done a poll just over this last week. Everyone I've talked to says this is 110% botched. I mean, if I added up the years they were in Afghanistan, I think it would shock people, or the level of sacrifice and the level of intimacy that even outside of uniform, they're compelled to not go to work right now to be helping an interpreter get his family out.
Well, yeah. Well, and strategically, we go back to, what's going on right now. One of our greatest kinetic adversaries is Iran. Shipping canals, Strait of Hormuz and such. We were right next door. We were the biggest threat to them because we could have launched an entire army from their, eastern border. Well, yeah, and look now we just displayed to them they can pretty much do whatever they want, and there's no pressure on them, immediate pressure.
Yeah, and it's and let's be clear too. When people say, "Well, we need to end the forever war," I'm like, well, define we, because we in 2010 is very different than we. It wasn't me. I want to be very clear on that. I was not on the ground in Afghanistan in 2020 or 2021.
Right.
And I'm here to tell you that just given when I was on the ground and what was going on in Kunar, for example, in 2010, I have a hard time rectifying that that's a tough assignment for so many of those folks, right? And I mean that, I don't mean, and again, I'm not denigrating their service. It's just very hard with the lenses that we have to look at that and say, and again, I don't want to armchair quarterback, but you made a great point. It's like 2,500 or 3,500 troops between Bagram and Kandahar seemed right, did factual keep this from happening.
Right.
Just if you disagree on the geopolitical. You didn't
need 100,000. You
didn't need it, right? So when people say we, I just want to say, how was the chow hall at Bath?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm being literally, but I say that from a military cultural perspective, because I was on CAF for a few months. Like, I didn't like being on staff, but I will tell you, it was not that tough of an assignment. And that's what I'm getting at. A little of that comparison is happening with Vietnam, frankly, too, where it's like this is where people truly don't understand the veteran health, the mental health crisis of our veterans, particularly of the GWAT era or of the Vietnam era, to be honest, right?
Right.
You cannot, I think it's completely disingenuous to allow talking points to conjure for people how they felt in 1975 and say that is the brush in which you need to paint what has gone on in Afghanistan. I agree. The images of a CH-47 on the embassy and helos, I mean, you cannot help but make the comparison. But that being said, there are so many differences We're not a conscript army. Yes, we listened to Cretan's Clearwater Revival. Yeah, we did that. Yep. But this is not the way this war was prosecuted. Was not done by like the profession of arms has come quite a lot. Not to mention the lethality that we do carry with restraint. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, our weapon systems are much more refined and much more lethal. We talk about battlefield medicine. Back in 45 years ago, 50 years ago, some very severe injuries. If you didn't make it to a field hospital within an hour, you were dead. Well, now, I've got a medic on my team that's trained in field medicine, pharmacology. I mean, they can do all kinds of stuff, and he can prolong my life for 6 or 8 hours until I can get back. Yeah,
I mean, dude, you were shot.
People survive.
You were shot, and just to be clear, so everyone's aware, if you don't read the article, Clay was shot. He had arterial bleeding. Yep. Had that been in the jungle in the Mekong Delta, I don't know if Clay would even be talking.
I wouldn't have made it. They wouldn't have me out. So
that's the other thing too, and again, I go back to the mental health. There's not a lot of and we do this, and I'm guilty of this too. We want to compare trauma, right? It's like, well, who had it harder? And I'm just here to tell you that our GWAT generation had it extremely hard. And had it good in some time. I mean, you can't paint us with the monolith is my point.
No, and I think what we're trying to point out with the conscript versus volunteer army is, let's just say we had the exact same trauma where there was a landmine, watching a buddy get shot, killing a child ourselves, something that really, really challenges your moral compass. I mean, that's through generations, a Revolutionary War soldier or beyond have those same feelings and those same effects afterwards. I would argue that being drafted and just simply not wanting to be there, believe in the cause or any of that adds to it. So I personally don't want to be compared to my uncle, who I know for a fact did not want to be there, and was a conscientious objector and was a field medic in the infantry. He said he didn't want to kill anybody, so they made him a medic.
Right, and that's the thing that about
him. That's a different deal.
Well, and that's the thing about just out of curiosity, I was looking at some of the folks that have been in office that are now in leadership positions who didn't even. By the way, just we're not picking on anyone here, but they didn't fight in Vietnam. But they certainly had opinions about it, even going back to the early part of their political career.
Right.
And they're pulling out an old playbook is my point. Yeah. They're trying to say, we don't deserve to be there, end forever war. And that conjures a lot of negativity. And I'm not taking away anyone's trauma from what they've experienced. I can't rob you of your trauma. Only you know what you've dealt with and how it's impacted your life. Right. But what I will say is that's not what the hell is going on in Afghanistan in 2020 or 2021 in the buildup to this very botched withdrawal.
Right.
That frankly, I mean, just again, we go back to the planning standpoint. I'm pretty sure a battle-hardened NCO. I mean, just look at our talent in the military. I'm pretty sure. I mean, we pay. I mean, tax dollars. You should be asking tax dollar questions right now.
I do every day.
Right. Right. Because we send people to SAMs. We send them to the War College. We send a ton of officers and NCOs to all this leadership development for things to build intelligence preparation of the battlefield. To liaison with our 3-letter agencies. We send people to graduate school, the Naval Postgraduate School. I've sat in those classrooms. I mean, we absolutely invest in creating tools and planning mechanisms to prevent exactly what happened here. And so as a taxpayer, one of the things I want you to be frustrated about, clearly, and I want you to ask about if an investigation even happens, it's probably going to be an absolute gong show and puppet show, but where is the evidence of the planning and who bears the responsibility? Because if you try to, I mean, here's the other playbook, right? And I'm going to go after the senior military leaders here for an example. You wear stars. We have not seen in 20 years, I'm not aware of it, unless they were just completely, it was a sexual thing or something else. They're not losing stars, guys. We're not holding people accountable for this stuff. Go ahead.
I mean, anybody in America, think back to Desert Storm. Who did you see on TV? You saw Colin Powell or Schwarzkopf. And then think back to the beginning of this, where you saw Tommy Franks on, and then you'd see McChrystal or Petraeus. You'd see them on TV. You'd see them. They were the ones briefing the progress of the war, what's going on.
Right.
I have yet to see Mark Milley stand on TV
in
an interview and answer the tough questions.
Yeah,
They're
Mark
always
Milley.
canned answers, and I'm sick of it. He's
Well,
a Green Beret.
well, exactly.
Like a Green Beret.
Well, and here's the thing, you and me, we're just white guys living in the suburbs.
Yeah.
Hey, Mark, you want to understand my white rage? It's right now.
Right now, bro.
Right fucking now. I'm sorry.
He was, again, so Lloyd Austin was my boss. Mike Flynn, who I greatly respect, was my boss. Michael Flynn, the former national security advisor to Donald Trump, was my 1st Battalion commander. And then I worked for him at DIA and JSOC and everywhere else. Lloyd Austin was, again, my commander in the 82nd. Mark Milley was the high-ranking officer in the Special Forces Command when I was there. And in JSOC. And I find it really hard to believe that these two, the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of Joint Chiefs, I find it very hard to believe this is their planning or this idea. And
again, what are they talking about? Even in the public sphere, they're not bringing attention. And I say that, and I apologize for my language, but my point, I kind of apologize. I don't wholly apologize. I want to be honest.
You don't have to.
But my point is that we've been talking about diversity and all this. I mean, these are the talking points of the administration, and our senior military leaders are signaling everything to our ranks. Meanwhile, if you believe a forever war has been going on, they also bear those responsibilities for planning and having a backbone, frankly, to stand up to an administration. No one resigned. I mean, I don't recall a resignation letter coming in the last month for someone saying, I can't, having been in Afghanistan, I can't support this. Right. So there's many people to blame. And what I'm saying is we should not, I don't even know how an investigation, I don't know what the precedence is for an investigation. Whatever we did after Vietnam doesn't seem to have worked, by the way, in terms of botched evacuations. But, I would love to see, Tammy Duckworth posing questions.
Yeah.
In an investigation, again, apolitically, because our military is apolitical.
My U.S. Senator from my region in Iowa, Joni Ernst, was a field grade officer in the Army and a transportation officer over in logistics over in Iraq. And I'd like to have her give a town hall as a former soldier.
Right.
And then what she plans to do as a U.S. Senator.
Well, and this is the thing, right? Like
I want to hear how enraged she is. I want to hear what she's going to do about it.
Right, exactly. I don't want to hear it either. Like I'm a private, like even me, I can recognize that being enraged really doesn't do any. It only hurts me and my family, frankly. But we can all go down that road. Yeah. But you're right. I mean, no, Tom Cotton, Dan Crenshaw, Brian Mast. It's time to show up, guys. Like you were off the ground. Provincial reconstruction teams, you've done nation buildings, you've bled, but guess what? Now it's time to ask these tough questions, because as a veteran and a voter and a taxpayer, I'm going to be asking, that's what I want to know. And frankly, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying I gave my body, my mind, and all my time to the cause, Now it's my turn to ask the tough questions of those that work for me now.
Exactly.
They're public servants. I was for a long time. Now they serve me.
Well, and here's the thing. I'd like to hear on the mental health front too, how we're dealing with I don't want a phone call or some automated thing from anyone calling me to check in on me. I don't want that. No, some people may be in need of that. I actually think, and I would advise, and part of the reason you and I are talking, we said this out the gate, is like, we want to show how veterans engage, to show that we're not just this, we're not victims. We're volunteers. We are very proud of our service, but again, 2 + 2 has to equal 4. And when it doesn't, there causes an intense frustration. And how could it not, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm getting at too, is like, a lot of people ask me, well, what can I do? Be an advocate for veterans within your community and your service members, and pay attention to what's going on in the world and vote accordingly, right? Because at this point, I got nothing to lose. I'm going to speak my mind based on my experiences, and I'm going to try to make it factual.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're absolutely. I mean, on the mental health front, you were sharing. I forget the statistic. What was the?
At one point, it was 7,000% increase. So 70 times as many people were calling into the Veterans Crisis Hotline than the week prior.
Oh my God! See, and that's
that's a huge indicator of people that are in at least questioning their personal worth. And that's a tough thing for a lot of us.
Well, and I'm going to say this too. From a number standpoint, right? Like, the heroics are easy to capture, right, with images and everything else. But right now, there's some veteran. I just get emotional, man.
Yeah.
there's some veteran that's really suffering, and are we, do we have a veteran caucus almost? I mean, that's kind of where I want to go with this is like, 4 times as many veterans who have died from combat are now taking their lives from our generation's global war on terror.
Right.
And it's a travesty, and I can go to a Hollywood movie and some actor, Hollywood crew, which again, I'm glad that there's some attention, but they're going to make millions of bucks off of it, again, it's on people's radar for a minute,
Right.
and then it goes away. But I don't know, like, I think that's something that needs to be talked about. And I want to be constructive of it, but at the same time, there's a real sadness there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think the thing, I've had all kinds this week. I've talked to a lot of buddies trying to bounce things off them, and them making sure I'm okay, me making sure they're okay. But it's the outside people. It's my family, my friends, my neighbors. And I would say the best way people have approached me about it is actually if I want to talk about it.
Sure.
Instead of walking up, I've had people, I'm so sorry about what happened in Afghanistan. I'm like, it wasn't my,
Yeah.
I did everything right.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I feel the same way. Not that, I'm sure I made mistakes as just
but you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I mean, it's, I feel the same way in the sense that it's like, I mean, I have had questions come up, could we have done more? I've done that to myself a little bit. And, again, I just going down that road, it's like, it wasn't for me to do. And that's where I come back to, the folks on the ground, which were very few, frankly.
Yeah.
This had transitioned to a political reality that, again, was just botched. And then what seems like should have been a relatively easy thing to do. And again, I don't want to armchair quarterback it, but evacuating people that we have contacts that can be vouched for. And again, this probably spans the administrations, but again, I go back to what, how serious and again, here's the refugee issue at play, right? Like,
well, that's kind of my point. We've got immigration centers, and I know they're way overwhelmed. But we could do something similar to that process. I think bring them, hold them, and I'm not talking about a horrific refugee camps aren't great, but neither is getting your head cut off.
Right.
So in a transitional form, I don't know where that would be. Hawaii, Guam, somewhere. It's only 80,000.
Right.
We have 15 times that come across the southern border.
Well, and again, anyone that said, well, I mean, here's the other thing, and you hear it on the right? Yeah. At the fringes, right? Which is just, insulting, frankly. Because again, I go back to don't be pro-veteran, and then at the same time say, well, what about, I'm so worried about these people. If you're really worried, go have a conversation with them, number one, about what they've endured, this beacon of light that is the United States, their love of American service members to risk it all to serve on our behalf as well, and believe in the promises that we've made them.
I've talked to well over a dozen Afghanis this week as I'm trying to help them get their paperwork to get here. No one left behind, and save our allies. I'm helping people. I'm gathering paperwork, getting it shipped off, and they are so appreciative. And like I said, the young woman I've been talking to since, for over a year, the student that I actually started as a research subject for a paper I'm writing, but, helping her and her family, father and sister and mother. And even before this situation, she would talk about how much she appreciated us and how she got to go to school and how she got to study dance and things like that. And you're absolutely right. The 99% of the people in Afghanistan love people for their kindness and their compassion.
Yeah.
They don't care what your religion is. They don't care what your skin color is. If you're nice, they're nice to you, and they're the most gracious people in the world.
I mean, I remember one of my old bosses, he talking about, hippies on the Silk Road in the 60s and 70s. I mean, that hospitality of these people it's in their tribal codes, right?
Yeah, it's phenomenal. Yeah.
Right.
The Botched code. Yeah. They're warm and welcoming unless you give them a reason not to be.
And the interesting thing too is like, as impoverished as Afghanistan is, I'm not saying that it doesn't have its problems, but it is a worldly country. I mean, again, it's at the crossroad of continents,
The Silk Road. The Silk Road, every civilization has been through that country. So
right, and people like to kind of go back to, like, they're saying it some prophetic statements like, well, the Russians couldn't do it, the British couldn't do it. Why did the Americans think that we could do it? It's like, well, we weren't creating something in our image,
right.
I mean, there's art, there's math.
Yeah.
Kabul as a cultural center, especially. I mean, look no further than Kabul. I mean, there's an American university in Kabul.
Absolutely.
I mean, so that's what I'm saying. Like, this isn't like, there are places on the fringes of Afghanistan that really do feel like you're stepping back a few hundred years. But there are also places where, between WhatsApp, Facebook, whatever they're studying, and the multiple languages they speak, to say that there wasn't hope in Afghanistan, I mean, it's just not true from my experience.
Well, all you have to do is look at pictures before the Russians got there. I mean, if anything, if we could get them back to where they were in 1976, that'd be great.
Yeah. Well, let's talk.
Well, they've always lived like that. No, they haven't.
That being said, man, I mean, what do we think? I mean, what has you concerned about maybe the next few months or even the year? I know it's hard to portend that, but what are you worried about?
My number one concern, I think, at this point is what the president said. I don't remember if it was last night or this morning that I read it, but he said prepare for casualties, which tells me that the Taliban is attacking us, or that we're going to go on the attack and go out and try and block, break up these checkpoints and stuff. And so my biggest fear is that he's going to be accepting casualties on the defensive side. Whereas if you're sending some paratroopers and some Green Berets and some other door kickers out to open the roads and open the pathways so people can get to the airport freely, then I'm willing to let that pass me without much pain, because that's what those people are there for. Those men and women volunteered, and they volunteered for the units that are over there right now. These are not the rank and file units; these are selective units. These people volunteered for, fully knowing they would be the first ones into combat.
Yeah, it's and again, I hear you, and I know you've spent so much time in these communities. I'll be honest, brutally honest. I struggle. Again, I honestly can't even answer my own question, because I am so frustrated by the fact of what has transpired, and it just all seems completely preventable. And I think the pressures that are on the White House. I mean, if you think about this, right? In 11 days, essentially, the country of Afghanistan has fallen to what many of us consider very much a terrorist organizations, and as primary sources, mind you. Like, I remember my target lists were predominantly Taliban in terms of.
They are in the U.S. Counterterrorism Watch, or the list of terrorist organizations.
Well, yeah, exactly. So even if you can rectify that with what you believe counterterrorism is a good mission, there are terrorists now in Afghanistan, folks. Like,
well, I mean, the entire time, the missions I was going after weren't after rank and file Taliban guys. Those were the guys up in the mountains smoking hash, shooting as we drove by. I was going after Hizb Islamic Ubedin, Jaish Muhammad, Al-Qaeda.
Yeah, these ideologues that were absolutely fine. They were. Here's the other thing. I mean, I'll just say this. I mean, if folks aren't aware, Arabs could care less if Pashtuns die for their cause.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're not brothers the way we would.
Yeah. I mean, give me a break. That I mean, they were paying for videos. Videos were commodity to them to shoot at Americans or ANSAF, and they would always inflate their numbers. They just wanted to get paid. So if these are mercenaries, just don't be fooled that, I thought it was funny. It's like, well, the Taliban has taken over the government. It's like, what government services are they providing? Because all I can tell is a ruthless judiciary just showed up. And even of itself. And again, I go back to this human rights issue, and even our vice president. I mean, let's go here for a second.
Sure.
Our vice president descends from the Indian subcontinent. Her mother's from Chennai, India. Right. So, if you think we have identity politics here in the United States, look at the Indian subcontinent.
Well, the British separated that. Afghanistan, Pakistan, India was one country. So separated by the Brits. So it is the same people. Different ethnicities and groups, tribal groups.
Sub-tribes and it's
Punjabis and Sikhs and stuff. But
well, I kind of worry. I mean, if Joe Biden loses his faculties here, and of course we're not hearing from Kamala. I mean, she has this domestic platform. Apparently, it doesn't apply on the foreign policy front, because, you know, little young girls are about to be brutalized, and it's already started. And they've been essentially promised as sexual. I don't even know how to say this. It's just like, it's like the Dark Ages, right? It's like so many of these folks coming into Afghanistan have been promised child brides, and it's just horrible and wretched. And again, where's the Me Too movement? Where's all our domestic, you know, and again, maybe they are. I'm just not seeing it. Maybe it's just drowned out completely. But humanitarian folks got to step up, and our people with resources need to start influencing that, just not only out of the goodness of their heart, but just from a national security standpoint. I don't see how you can decouple those.
Well, you know, I'm right there with you, and my biggest, I guess, talking point on that would be how I want to see less talking and more action, please,
Right.
from everyone. Stop arguing, stop trying to figure out what someone else should do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if anything, this week has taught me that, I mean, and frankly, you know, my wife was the one, you know, Air Force veteran, that as I'm just ranting and raving and trying to get my point across, she's doing,
right.
Trying to get people out of Afghanistan. And we need more doers on the humanitarian front. And yeah, I'm trying to figure that out. It always goes to resources, but I think the other side of it is education of ourselves, of what transpires. You know, people are trying to, on the right, on the left, across the board, they're trying. I mean, let's go at that behavior. Let's diagnose what's not working. You know, I'm not convinced that Tucker Carlson and Anderson Cooper don't call each other up every night and think about what invective the other one can fly to get the other group enraged or not.
Right.
You know, I want to. I mean, honestly, like they're all
like pro wrestling, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're all capitalists. Like I think they laugh in the penthouse at night.
Right.
And you made a great point. Like this, some good that actually could, you know, a crisis sometimes can promote behavior of civility, because people, it's like parents watching, or like a child watching divorced parents. At some point, you know, in terms of our foreign policy as well as our national security, you got to start to listen. Yeah. And again, I go back to, you know, the politics of our veteran community. I really hope you speak up. Right. Not consequences be damned, but, you know, talk about it, because, you know, we are a cross section of the entire United States. And diversity is incredibly powerful.
It is the military, you know. The 82nd Airborne, our patch, the AA, it stands for All Americans. That's, you know, back in the World War I, it was the first military unit that was not only regionally based. There was a soldier from every state. Yeah. So the general said, okay, we're the All Americans, and they created the patch. So, at least in the 82nd Airborne, that has been since day one. Yeah.
And here's the thing, man. I'm not here to say there's problems, but, you know, my grandfather fought in World War II on my dad's side, was in a segregated military. Sure. My grandfather, the 91-year-old, fought in a desegregated military. And he told me the other day, you know, he had no problem with his African-American buddy being on the back of the bus based on what they endured in their career experience or their training leading up to it. So we need to stop I mean, in my opinion, just on this issue, keep talking about it, but let's focus on the good things that have happened in the military. And again, this is where I think lessons can be learned across the board when it comes to our opinions about each other, you know, identity politics or whatever they are. And just, you know, again, like this ought to be unifying. If you think everything's sad, I kind of feel like that's the next step, is like, you know, how do we get out of this arguing phase and into this doing phase? And unfortunately, I feel like veterans you do you. I mean, do what you got to do. But, you know, I think we got to talk more into the platform and realize just how kind of dirty it feels a little bit. But you got to state what's going on. Otherwise, these cultures don't change. And a lot of people can say, you already said it with recruitment alone. It's like we might lose some very talented, good people because they're worried about what has transpired, and we're not giving them hope with all the argument.
Yeah. I I mean, we need to, first of all, I think we need to realize that it wasn't a waste. And if you think it was a waste, then you're not the person I thought you were as a soldier. You have to fight the good fight. You're not always going to win. You can do everything right and it can still all go wrong. You have to fight the good fight. And I think we did for 20 years. You know, we all went over there. We went and we did the best we could with what we had and the restrictions we were given. We've talked about those restrictions and other things. But I think service members, we need to be proud in ourselves first. And I think that's going to clear up some of the mental health issues and turn that kind of self-doubt, self-depreciation into, into action or anger with, with how the situation ended or is unfolding currently. I wouldn't say the situation's over by any stretch, but how it's currently occurring.
I love the spirit that you have, Clay, and I will just tell you, I know it hasn't always been like that for you. No. We've talked very personally about the challenges, traumatic brain injury, injuries, the effects on family. You have been through your woods, my friend, and it's been a real pleasure, frankly, to hear your story, to capture it. It was very, very powerful for me, and it gives me that same reminder. Thanks. And that is that, we live in an amazing country. We served alongside amazing people. And, we're here to help each other. I mean, at the end of the day, you hear that statement before, like, hey, no one's coming. It's like, that's BS in the veteran community. Like, we're here for each other. And there's some tremendous benefits of that. I always feel uplifted talking to other veterans. It's probably why I do what I do, man. This many years out of uniform, but thank you, Clay. I really have nothing else to say. I think you nailed it on the head, man.
I guess my final thing is I'm incredibly sad about what's going on right now. I try to hold my composure all conversation, but I'm incredibly sad. I'm let down. But I'm still very proud of what we all did while we were there.
Yep.
I never looked to my left or my right and thought it was a shame that I was there at that moment.
Yep. Intrinsically, no one's going to rewrite your narrative, my narrative.
No.
We know.
I think the American public needs to see that a lot of us are very proud of what we did, because when we were there, we knew we should be there. And now our anger is the fact that we're not still there.
Yeah.
Not that we haven't left yet, but that we're not still there.
Yeah. If you're looking to judge us, I mean, I'm not a victim. I'm a volunteer. I'm here, and I acknowledge people that might be struggling, but that's my example. Yeah. That's my example. Yep.
That's my message to them, is be proud of what you did. It's not your fault what's going on, and it's not a waste. We gave a lot of hope and security to people that otherwise would never have had it.
Yep. Dead on, my friend. Well, that's good, man. Well, thank you, Clay. Again, if you want to read about Clay, chummyvet.com, there's a chronology of his experiences under Ordinarily Extraordinary Veterans. I encourage you to check it out. Maybe we'll do more of these. I don't know. Sure. I would love your feedback. I imagine, Clay, you probably would too. I'm on Facebook. I'm on email as well, Ryan@chummyvet.com. Again, Ryan@chummyvet.com. If you want to share a perspective with me, I guarantee you I will keep it private, and to the degree you want it shared, frankly. But I'm happy to engage with you. Anything else?
No, I'm on LinkedIn. I post from time to time. Nothing too political or anything, just facts.
All right, brother. All right, everyone. Thanks, Clay. Thanks again. Appreciate your puppy there.
Yeah.
All right, man. Take care.